Okay, I guess before we get started, let's clarify who everyone is on stage right now. So obviously I'm Jess Kavinsky, that's been established a couple times. Okay. I'm Judge Jodi Thomas.
And I'm Hillman.
Okay, let's dive in. So when we were figuring out who was going to be the interview partner, the interview pair, you guys stood out. Your relationship started off kind of rocky, but you guys ended up developing something that's very different for a lot of people. However, it's also kind of like a small world thing. You guys also found out you ended up going to the same high school. Can you talk a little bit more briefly about your relationship and the small world attitude you guys have?
Sure. When I first met Jodi, she was assigned to my case, and she looked a little familiar, but I had no idea how. As I got to know her throughout my court case, I realized that she was a Capital Law alumna, and I had previously worked at Capital Law, and so I thought I maybe recognized her from some special events or on boards and things, so that was it. Throughout my cases, Jodi and I, that attorney-client relationship completely switched, and we became friends. And as soon as I graduated the program, of course, what do? I sought her out on Facebook, which is what we do, and I realized her maiden name is on her profile. And lo and behold, I realized that not only did we grow up in Gahanna together, that we literally rode the school bus together when we were younger.
So when I remember meeting Jill was back in 2012 when she became my client. I remember meeting her in the back where we had the inmates would be set up on the wall with handcuffed. And I remember sitting beside her and talking to her about her story. And she was on probation with another judge, and things were just not going well with that. And I thought she would be a really good candidate for our mental health court program. And from there made the referral. Now the mental health court program is a 2-year-long program, so I was seeing Jill weekly when she would come in for status review hearings, meeting with the judge, the coordinator, the probation officer. And it wasn't really a smooth road for Jill. And I actually remember a treatment team meeting where there was discussion about her being terminated from this program. But I knew there was just so much more in her journey. And I had just previously visited a out-of-county residential program in Waverly, and I could see Jill at this place. So I advocated for her to go out of the county and go into a long-term residential. We did keep in contact while she was there. When she came back, she was an absolutely different woman. I mean, she hit the ground running. She was so committed to her recovery. I was watching her apply for jobs, coming in and talking to the participants. And after she graduated was when our relationship really changed. She was coming back to the courts, doing some things, doing some leads. But last year I was campaigning probably one of the most physically and mentally challenging things I've ever done. And she was going through a very contested custody battle. And we were each other's support systems. And often, and most nights, she was the last person I talked to. So she's a very integral part of my life now and my support system.
So Jodi talked about how you had a little rocky start, but you ended up here and you're sitting here in front of us today. Can you give us more information about your story and how you got to where you are?
Of course. My journey began in Gahanna, like we said, and I was raised in what I thought was a normal household. I had 2 parents there, I had an older sibling, we had a roof, we had food on the table, I had the things that I needed. And like many of you, I am assuming I was that girl. I was top of my class at Gahanna, National Honor Society, Student Council. I was volleyball captain, show choir, the church choirs. I was like that perfect person. I was raised with morals and ethics and values. I was raised to respect myself and to respect others. And I didn't know though then, but I know all of these things now, that I am also a perfectionist, independent, anxiety-filled alcoholic. And growing up, I didn't realize that until my world took a little tumble. My perfectionism side tells me that I will set an expectation, and if I don't meet it, I have failed. No one else sets those expectations for me. It's all in my head. My independent nature tells me that I don't need your help. I've got this, right? I'm a perfectionist. I don't need anybody else to help me with this, no matter how crazy the work is or anything. I don't need your help. I've got this. My anxiety tells me that Whenever something doesn't go perfect, I have failed, and I am filled with guilt and shame because I didn't get it right. And then my alcoholism is a disease. And when all of those other things falter and come together, what do? My body wants to drink, to forget all the things that I can't do perfectly. And that cycle is just a horrible cycle to be in. A couple quick philosophies. I am an addict addicted to alcohol. I believe that addiction is a mindset. Doesn't matter if it's heroin, gambling, sex, alcohol. My mind thinks differently than people that are not in addiction. I obsess over things. And that's half of my friends are heroin addicts. So I believe that it's just a straight mindset. My life was great. I'm the first in my family to go to college. I went to Capital, and my degree's in public relations, and I spent most of my career in alumni relations, and I had the great house that my husband and I built, and the 2 cars in the garage, and we traveled, had an amazing, healthy son. And my perfectionism, though, kicked in, and I couldn't keep it all together. Before I knew it, the first thing that majorly happened is I went from like employee of the month to being fired because I was drinking every day, all day. From there, my shame and embarrassment kicked in, and I literally found myself drinking all day, every day, just to forget. Before I knew it, I was living on the streets. I was living at one point in a trap house at Ohio and Whittier. And if you don't know what a trap house is, that is a house where dealers and pimps and users come in to do their deal. Probably no electricity, no water, that kind of thing. I've slept in a tent across from the South High Drive-In. I've showered in McDonald's bathrooms. I have jumped into a stranger's pool, fully clothed, not only to bathe, but to do my laundry at the same time. Not a joke. Ingenious. I know what it's like to be beaten every day. I know what it's like to be kicked and hit and punched and slapped and drugged by my hair. I know what it's like to be choked. I have the skill to fake passing out when you're being choked so that he'll leave you alone. Those kind of qualities aren't exactly things that a National Honor Society gal really wants to know. Throughout this thing, I had acquired, obviously, criminal charges because I couldn't stop drinking. And as Ryan actually was mentioning, I didn't see it then, but my criminal record and all of these things that I went through that are horrific brought me into specialty dockets. And I was raised to be a confident woman, and by the end of that journey, I was literally a no name. Jill did not exist. I was known as his girl. And when I got into the specialty dockets, that changed my journey. And I'm so grateful for them because I 100% know that if I had not entered this program, I would not be here. I would be dead either by my own hands or by the hands of someone else. And that is absolute truth.
Thank you for sharing. So you talked on how Jodi recommended you for the recovery program. So you've worked with many people like Jill. What drives you to help these people, and how did you get to the place where you can approach law in this completely different way?
So I didn't always know I wanted to be a lawyer, or for that matter, a judge. I was a physical therapy major. I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know what capacity. And I just had this bleeding heart, but then when I started the math and the science, it just didn't work for me. So I actually switched majors and ended up at the Ohio State University College of Social Work, and absolutely fell in love with the coursework and everything that I was learning in this college. My senior year, I kind of made the decision that I was going to go on to law school. So I asked to be placed for my field work in something that involved the criminal justice world. And I was so fortunate to be placed at the Franklin County Public Defender's Office. I stayed on there as a social work intern all the way through law school, and then I ended up switching to be an intern. But that's where the majority of my career was, 14 years at the Franklin County Public Defender's Office. When I passed the bar, I got hired on into our municipal division. Now this division, the types of cases we saw were domestic violence, soliciting, driving under the influence, petty theft, even traffic charges like driving under suspension. And as a public defender and being in the busiest municipal court in the state of Ohio, I represented a lot of people. And I was zealously advocating for their legal rights and but it just wasn't enough for me. I kept seeing the same people come back. I was very frustrated at, what was going on and, with their cases. And so I kind of ended up starting to do my own referrals to different agencies. I would ask different questions about, do they have mental health? Are you linked? Do you have a case manager that would be willing to come in and talk on your behalf? So that when I ended up taking them in front of the judge or negotiating their plea agreement with the prosecutor, I was creating more of a story about that person, looking at them and not just their case. I ended up my reputation in the public defender's office was definitely the social worker attorney. The great news about what was going on is I was kind of having my own type of style of practice. The municipal court was changing. We started with our mental health court. That was the first specialized docket. And I became a staple in that program. Every Wednesday I was showing up, not only just on my clients, but checking in on all the other PD clients, and just absolutely loved the whole style of what this program did. And I ended up going back to my supervisor and said, I see a benefit of having one attorney represent the participants. It creates one single representation, but it's support, it's encouragement, and we're not just doing the legal things. So we created a pilot program where I was the main attorney for all 5 specialized dockets. And it was a lot of work, but it was the most rewarding experience that I can't even express. So I did that for about 5 years, and one of the judges who started mental health court, but also was presiding over the drug court at that time, decided to retire and go into the community to continue to fight the opiate epidemic. And it just seemed like all the cards just lined up. And I knew that there was something else out there for me. So I ended up putting my name in. I got appointed, and I ran last year and was elected to the bench. I've been on the bench for about 2 years. And I think if you ask a lot of the attorneys and individuals that I work with, my courtroom, I'm not saying it's any different than, all the other different judges. We have an amazing bench that we work with. But I definitely bring my social work background and the work that I've done in the specialized docket to every case that I see. I really pay attention to the person that's in front of me. The great news is that this January I was voted on by my colleagues to be the next judge to preside over the opiate extension program. So a program that I spent many years in, working with the individuals. Now I get to play a different role. And it is the most amazing, remarkable experience to be part of that program and watching these people who come into our court at the lowest point of their life come out of it like this. It's just that role that I have as a judge to be a part of that, I think it is so touching. So that's where I got to where I am.
You two obviously have very different pasts and very different experiences. However, you were able to form this great relationship. Did you guys always have this mutual trust and this mutual understanding of each other?
No. When I first entered into the court system with Judge Vandekar, who was my judge at that time, and I met Jodi for the first time, I was not liking the courts. I won't use the word hate because I'm not a hater, but okay, I hated the courts. I hated everything about them, everybody in it, and of course, when you enter into something like this, you're full of fear, you're full of guilt, shame, and you think everybody's out to get you. Jodi, when I first met her, they had taken me back. I showed up finally to one of my court appearances, which I had skipped so many that I was getting arrested. And I walked behind the bench, which is where you go if you're about to get arrested. And I was handcuffed to a bench, which is how it works. And Jodi entered, and the first thing I remember is that there's this long conference table. And instead of where everybody else would sit on the opposite side, Jodi literally came around and sat beside me. She looked me in the eye, she asked me questions, she listened. I had no idea that a public defender could do that because I had previous experience where I wasn't even asked one question. I knew something was different. I had no idea what the specialty dockets were really about. I basically just did it to get out of jail because I'd been to jail several times. The workhouse, AKA Franklin County Corrections 2, AKA Jackson Pike, you've heard of all those things, is not a pleasant experience. It is a hopeless, hopeless place, and you don't want to go there. So if you've never been there, don't go back. But Jodi had this energy about her, and I knew something was going to be different. I didn't know what yet, but I was excited, sort of. I guess you can be handcuffed to a bench, but I knew something was going to be different. And from there, it just kind of grew into this.
The stigma she's talking about, as far as her, the way she felt when she came to the courts, is a very real phenomenon that goes on. I mean, I've represented thousands of people, being a public defender for so many years, and you know, they didn't know me when I first would walk up to them, and I would be called public pretender. When are you going to be a real lawyer? When are you going to law school? You know, the stigma of just being a public defender was a negative aspect to people that would come into court. The same goes for judges and the reputation of these cookie-cutter judges that don't look at, you know, the person at all, and they don't want to hear anything. They look at how many priors you have, and they multiply that, and that's your jail time. So that is a real, you know, feeling that goes on. So when you have somebody that's coming in with these charges, and they have this lack of trust for the courts and for the attorneys, it's very difficult for them to then open up about their addiction and mental health and ask for help. So right off the bat, it's very difficult to build those relationships.
A prime example for that, as I referenced, you know, previous public defenders didn't listen and they didn't ask. I have a theft on my record back in the day. And when I went in and talked to my public defender, she didn't ask questions. I was too afraid to talk. Nobody cared about my story. It was black and white, go stand before the judge, say nothing, and out you go. Had somebody asked, they would have found out that that day that that theft occurred, just minutes before it happened, I was attacked and raped in broad daylight. And I don't remember anything about what happened except for the fact that I really just wanted to get the leaves out of my hair, and I wanted to go to a restroom. So what I did is I walked into a Kroger, got to the restroom. What I've been told, because I don't remember any of it, I took 2 bottles of vodka off the shelf, chugged them both in the bathroom, passed out, someone found me, and I was taken out by stretcher to the ER. I had money in my purse that day. I'm not a thief. And the old courts would just see me as a thief. And this new wave of mentality gets to know what's really going on.
With this new wave of mentality that is happening, can you paint me a picture of what specialized dockets looks like now and how your relationship looks like in the rest of the court system?
Well, the specialized dockets actually, as I mentioned previously, Franklin County is or the municipal court is the largest municipal court in the state of Ohio, and I believe it's the second largest, I think, in the country. So lots of cases. So when we're looking at the specialized dockets, we actually only serve a very small number of individuals. However, that group of individuals for each of the specialized dockets are probably our most high-risk, most vulnerable populations. And it's truly amazing that we can provide the types of resources for these individuals. I know I was one attorney for all those 5 specialized dockets. Now we have 8 public defenders, 2 assigned to each program that are representing the individuals in those programs. I also can say that what the specialized dockets look like is we're not just looking at the legal case. You know, yes, they plead guilty to get into the program, and at the end, when they complete, the charge can be vacated and dismissed. But all the stuff in the middle is we're getting them medication, we're looking at their housing situation, we're helping with jobs, and it's very common for even judges or staff members of these programs to write letters on behalf of the participants when they're in good compliance to help them get housing. I just had a situation where somebody was trying to get housing with the landlord, and because of their record, they would not allow this person housing. So we wrote a letter on their behalf to say, yes, they have this mark on their record, but this is all the things that they are doing. And that person got housing. Same with employment. So that's a little bit a look of what the specialized dockets are doing for our participants.
And from a Jill perspective, it doesn't even make sense that you go to court thinking you're going to be punished, and then you walk in and part of your program is going to your doctor. And they don't just mean going to your doctor. They don't just tell you to go. They help you find a doctor. They help you find a counselor. They help you find ways to pay for your medications and take them as prescribed. That whole philosophy didn't even make sense until I got in there. There's so many barriers for someone like me. You know, we've burnt every bridge. We hate ourselves. We are at our worst when we come to people like Jodi. And Every single little tiny barrier can make or break me for a day. Simple, a bus pass. The specialty dockets gives out bus passes to people that we have to report. At first I had to report twice a week. I was there for DUI, so I don't have a license, I don't have a car, I had no way to get there. If I couldn't get there, I would know that that means I'm in more trouble, right? Then I'm more depressed, I'm more anxious, and then in my mind, when I'm already at my worst, I say forget it. Why bother? You know, I'm just gonna go back to doing whatever I was doing. It's not worth it. So like a bus pass, that seems so simple, but a bus pass that the specialty dockets can offer people can literally make or break a day. The other part of that is, you know, part of my probation was going to a women's recovery center in Waverly. And the resources continued there. They don't just dump you and head you off. You know, I was able to get to appointments. They drove me up here from Waverly to go to my court appearances. Those kinds of things can literally change a person's life. A prime example about your mind and things is there was a woman in my recovery center, and she was in her mid-60s, and she looked like this. Everybody stayed away from her. She was a recluse. She stayed to herself. Nobody wanted to talk to her. They thought she was cranky all the time. And when it was her turn in those homes, those houses, you have chores you have to do. And whenever her chore was to cook, she refused. She would take whatever consequence it was. And little did any of us know that Holly was her name. And Holly, while she was there, was able to get resources to get glasses. Holly was squinting her whole life. That's why she looked like this. And Holly refused to cook because she couldn't read the knobs on the stove. You know, that's the kind of stuff that specialty dockets and those kinds of things can help somebody with. It is a holistic approach that the specialty dockets take. Mind, body, spirit, you know, and I'm not talking religion, and that can be what your spiritual thing is, but, you know, my mind, I'm anxious all the time, right? I can't turn my brain off. My perfectionism says you didn't get 20 things done today, so you're not sleeping. Body, you know, when I'm anxious, I mean, I can feel it. You know, I'm sick to my stomach that I don't eat. Spirit, you know, I'm broken. You know, if I hate everything about me, I have no spiritual calm, as he was talking about earlier. All of those holistic approaches through the resources that they give is how it kind of comes together. It can really help somebody recover.
I also want to point out that once the participants graduate from the program, we continue to work with them as they go on and live their life. And Jill's a perfect example of that. She comes back, she does some work for the courts. She was in our training video for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. Oops, is that on there? Okay, I don't know what's going on, but it's there. That's okay. So she's in a training video that when we go out to the Sheriff's Department, they're listening to her talk about the specialized dockets. She also comes back for our drug education program. We have a mini drug class that we have some people do, and she will come back and give her story and talk to those participants. In addition, we have several participants that have gone on to higher education, and now they work for our court. So what an exciting thing to see that we are standing behind our participants, and we are hiring them in the court to work and continue on their stuff. We have social workers that are doing their internships. We have prior graduates from the CATCH program that are working for the prosecutor's office, the same department that prosecuted them. They're now working for. So just, I mean, overall, when you see what these courts can do for these individuals is truly amazing.
It is amazing seeing all this happen in Franklin County. So for the places that, like non-Franklin County places, I know that in Hamilton County right now, they just started a change court, which is very similar to the catch court here, and they work with trafficking. What tips can you give other court systems that don't have this docket program established yet to help end this stigma and start treating the people that come in as people?
What I would say is education, training, education. I think it's so important that other communities, other courts, other attorneys go out and learn about these social issues and how they affect the criminal justice system. I'm seeing more and more continuing even legal education where we're not just learning about landlord-tenant stuff, but we're learning about signs for human trafficking. We're learning about the opiate and how it affects the role of an attorney. I did a speaking engagement of, you know, how the role of a defense attorney is changing when you know your client is impaired or suffering from mental health. So all that is extremely important. Franklin County is a very progressive community, and it's exciting to see a lot of the things that our courts have established. Ryan talked about the probation department, did a complete overhaul, and we are doing the evidence-based sentencing. So when somebody gets placed on probation, oh, there it is now. Before they even meet their probation officer, they're doing a risk assessment. So the Ohio Risk Assessment tool that determines what risk level they are. Are they high? Are they moderate? Are they low? And then they're placed with a probation officer that's done training within that risk level. And then they come up with a treatment plan that's specific for that person. So again, we're looking at the person and not necessarily the charge that put them on probation. We have a lot of tools for the domestic violence, either offenders or even victims, the lethality tools. In addition, I'm so excited to announce that Franklin County Municipal Court is the first court that offers a program in the probation department for the LGBTQI community to stop the cycle of domestic violence. When you have a same-sex couple, the dynamic of that relationship is very different than a heterosexual couple. And a lot of the treatment that was for domestic violence offenders or people charged with that only deal with the dynamic of a man and female relationship. So the court felt that there was a need for this community, and now we have this program to help, these issues. So it's remarkable to see how the laws aren't changing, but people are evolving, and they're evolving the way they identify themselves. So now the courts are evolving as well in the way we enforce these laws and the way we interpret them. So
I'm sure many of these audience members are not involved in the legal system and are not going to law school or not planning on it. For those who are not involved in anything on the legal side, what are some things that you can tell them and some tips that you can give on to help address this stigma that we have in the court system and this stigma of addiction?
Well, if you are not involved in the court system, like I said earlier, stay away. First of all, I think simply realizing that there are thousands and thousands of me around you right now. In fact, if you are not like me, I would guarantee you that somebody around you in this room or in your classes, in your offices, in your family, that are just like me. We are everywhere. With that, please know that people with mental health issues and addiction problems, we are not horrible people. We are intelligent, we are creative, we are compassionate, we're caring, we are responsible, but when our problems take over our lives, those aren't the people we are. Like if you're stressed out because you have classes and you've got a project for work and you don't get any sleep over it, have you ever bitten your friend's head off? Have you ever acted like not normal? That's the same kind of thing for me, just mine's at a different level. Another thing is that, let's talk bottoms. So rock bottoms. Everybody thinks that a rock bottom is what you see on TV. Somebody got into jail, they got arrested, somebody was shot on the street. Everybody thinks that that should be a bottom. And when somebody like me is getting beaten or arrested or has a DUI, that should have been my bottom, right? It really should have, right? That was the worst day in my life, right? But you have no idea. My bottom had nothing to do with violence. It had nothing to do with the criminal justice system. It was June 2nd of 2013, and it was a quiet, lonely, sad night where I literally just sat in a room. That was my bottom. That's what led me here. We do some really, really not great things when we're using and we're out of our minds, but that does not define who we are. The one other thing too is for people like me, addiction, mental health is everywhere, but so is recovery. We are so fortunate in Franklin County. I mean, the specialty dockets, wow, to start people on their journey. Recovery programs in this area are amazing. There is so much here if you can just reach out for it. And reaching out, if you're like me, is not a weakness. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of oomph to get up there and say, something's not right today. I'm looking in the mirror and I don't like this person, right? There is no shame in asking for help or talking.
we're in the day and age where you cannot turn on your TV or you cannot scroll through your social media without reading something or hearing something about the hundreds of people that are dying from addiction, overdose, and mental health. We have to start talking. We have to start talking about mental health and addiction like we talk about cures for cancer, heart disease, diabetes. You know, I can't stress enough that we have to change the conversation in your social groups, at the water cooler, at work, or in the little, area where you're getting your coffee, in your schools. When you see somebody and you ask them how they're doing, really listen to what they're saying. Educate yourself on mental health and addictions and the signs to look for. And if you are one that's struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help. As Jill said, there is recovery possibilities everywhere. There's people out there that really want to help people get out of this life.
You two have shared amazing stories today and given us lots of information. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave our audience with before we head out?
Very plain and simple, as I sit on the stage next to my dear friends and this extraordinary woman, and listening to Raleigh and Ryan, and think about all the people that I've worked with that have touched my life through the work that I've done, I know I'm right where I need to be. And it's saving the world one person at a time. That's it.
For me, it's a basic thing. Don't judge. Your words and your actions every day, all day matter. A condescending look versus a smile to somebody who looks disheveled on the street can literally make or break their day. And it's some serious stuff. Be of service to somebody. Your friends, if you know that something's going on, reach out. It's not, like I said earlier, it's not shameful anymore. I always, actually Ryan touched on it earlier, my life journey has been insane. When I was growing up, little did I know that I'd be sitting on the stage with Judge Thomas. And, it's crazy to me to think that I am so grateful for all the horrific things that I have put myself through. Because I'm a pretty good person today. I can look myself in the mirror most of the time and think I'm a pretty good person. And I have so many philosophies of life now that I live by. The first is this. My perfectionist head does still exist, but it's a little calmer these days. And even when I think I'm having the worst day, everything has gone wrong, right? I had a typo on a presentation. My son doesn't want to do his homework. I literally am able to take a breath and say to myself, you know what, Jill? If that is the worst thing that happens to you today, it is a pretty damn good day. And I immediately always follow that up with, there are thousands and thousands of people right now who would give anything to be me, or for all of you that matter, even on our worst days. And I'm so grateful for that blessing.
Thank you both so much.